Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Emma Schermer Tamir. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
Emma is the owner and founder of Marketing by Emma. And so she's going to be talking about all things marketing, as well as YouTube, and why branding and getting it out there is so important. And so, Emma, again, thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I always love to ask my guests how they kind of got on this path. What sort of led you to get to where you are now?
I feel like a lot of things conspired to get me to where I am now. Some of it was luck, some of it was just the right place at the right time, and some of it was hard work paying off. I had actually fell into marketing because I was a good writer and a good communicator. And when I met my now husband, I was actually working for a startup software company. And he told me, I don't know the fate of our future. This is only our second date. So who knows what's going to happen? But I can see how miserable you are at your job. And I have a really big network, and I would love to be able to introduce you to that network. So if you want to send me your CV and I'll send it out. And I was just like, that is so embarrassing. Absolutely not. No way. And really, more than anything else, this journey has been both in growing a business, but even more so in growing myself and getting more and more comfortable and putting myself out there and really learning how to be confident in what it is that I want to do. And so he was very persistent and he kept pushing. And eventually we got married and he got tired of waiting. So when I was away on a business trip, he was left at home by himself for 5 days, which I learned can be quite dangerous because my husband might just start a business when I'm gone. And so I came back and he said, okay, all these people want to talk with you about working together. And I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And that was the birth of Marketing by Emma, which was almost 8 years ago now. And at the time, I really saw it as something that would be more of a freelance job, essentially, to be able to have the freedom and flexibility to do it when and where I wanted. And very quickly into the business, this is life, we started to get a lot of approaches, a lot of people being excited about wanting to work with us. And we had a decision to make. Do we want to keep this really small and just keep it as my husband and I? Or do we want to try to grow this and figure that out and hire people and do all of that? And so, despite the fact that I had no business experience, I'd never even managed somebody before, we embarked on a journey of growing a business and learning all the ins and outs and navigating pandemics and this, that, and the other. It's been quite the journey.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing that story with us, Emma. And I have to just say that my husband and your husband must be cut from the same cloth because he is always, I've got this great idea. Let's start a business. And then I get thrown into it as well. So that just sounds like the story of my life right along. I love that. First of all, he was so adamant about really encouraging you to get out there and do something that maybe you didn't foresee for yourself. And so I think that's really cool as an opportunity to get some outside perspective because there's times when we don't see the potential, and that he was like your cheerleader, I think is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting because I think so many times we hear stories about people doing brand things and starting businesses because of an innate sense of what they knew they were capable of doing. And I don't think that's everybody's story. And I think that there are lots of people who maybe they don't have the confidence and they don't see what other people see yet. And so being able to surround yourself with people that believe in you and are able to help nudge you along the way when you might be getting in your own way and obstructing your own path can be really important.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree with that for sure. And so let's talk then a little bit about as you're growing this business, you said you kind of had a decision to make, and were you going to scale it or were you going to keep it small? And so tell us which direction you decided to go.
Absolutely. So I guess I should also tell people what my business is because I realized I zoomed right over that. So we have an e-commerce copywriting firm. We help businesses that sell products online be able to better connect with their dream customers by really getting clear about who you are as a brand and who your customers are, and then facilitating a deep relationship between your business and your customers. And so that decision of, do we stay small or do we grow? I guess I had just gotten that extra little bit of confidence I needed to say, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's see what we can do. And I started off by hiring my friends because that just seemed like the easiest thing to do. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to everybody. Fortunately, I have some friends that are great writers and are very dependable. And so it did not get in the way of any of our friendships. But I do think that is our natural inclination when we do begin to start hiring, to just want to hire from the pool that we already have. And you always want to be mindful of that and considering that if it doesn't go well, it could hinder the future of that relationship. But I guess I'm crazy because I'm also in business with my husband, so I don't follow any of my own rules.
Well, and you're right. Not everything is going to be cut and dry. Not every situation is going to be, this is how it has to be, or it's going to be this way. Sometimes there's flexibility in it, right? And so that's such a valid point, though, about being mindful of who you're bringing with you, and are they dependable? Are they going to fill the role that you need? And could it possibly muddy the waters for your friendship if it maybe goes sour? And so that's really something to consider for sure when you're launching a business and who you're going to bring with you
Yes.
on that journey. So thank you for detailing that and also sharing with us what it is exactly that you're doing to help your clients. You mentioned copywriting and branding, and then I want to talk a little bit about the YouTube side of it, because this is something that I think your YouTube channel is really experiencing some big growth. And I want to have you share with us what made you launch that? What was kind of the inspiration? And maybe what was it that you said, I think this is the way to go?
So I guess this is starting to become a theme of the conversation today, which is I actually wanted to start a YouTube channel years ago, and I did not have the confidence to do that. I did build my business in large part through thought leadership, but I was always speaking on other people's platforms. I was speaking on other people's podcasts and webinars and YouTube channels and courses. And for some reason, that felt safer to me because it was almost like somebody else was giving me permission, was saying, we think that you have something valuable to say. And then I felt comfortable contributing to that. But YouTube and having my own channel felt very different because it was me saying that I had something to say, which felt quite audacious and very uncomfortable for me. And it's still something that I'm grappling with. I've been consistently publishing on YouTube for, I guess, almost 6 months now. And it is really a mental game because when you are doing anything new, you are really needing to tap into your faith in yourself and also clarity in what your long term goals are. And there's going to be a really big gap between what you want and where you are. And so figuring out ways of being able to persevere through that and not get in your own way can be quite challenging because even still now, there are days and I release a video and I'm really enthusiastic and excited about it, and it just doesn't perform the way that I hoped it would. And alternatively, like last week is an example of a video that I released and I almost didn't release it. I sat on it for months. It was a video about, so most of the content that I make is very tactical about copywriting and branding and different psychological principles and actionable concepts and tips that you can apply to your business. Still in that vein, but a little bit of a different take on that was this video. I filmed it months ago about how to network as an introvert. I self identify as an introvert. And it can be really scary and difficult to put yourself out there, but that is also a part of marketing. And especially if you're wanting to grow your own business, you're going to have to get comfortable doing that. But it felt like a more personal video. It felt like a more vulnerable video. And I didn't really know whether anybody would want to hear about that or be interested in that. When I first published the video, it really wasn't doing very well. And then I was getting home very late from a networking event, by the irony there. And I just opened the YouTube app and I was like, whoa, what happened? Now, this didn't go viral or anything, but for me, it was by far my best organically performing video to date. And it was something that I almost never even let see the light of day because I was so nervous about putting it out there. I think I'm talking a little bit in a lot of different directions right now, but all of that to say that I think for me, first and foremost, starting YouTube was something that I've just always wanted to do. And so I wanted to do that for myself, but also recognizing the power of having a personal brand, the power of being able to have my own content to say the things that I want to say, and all of the different ways that can be used as a tool, both to foster the relationships that I currently have, to attract new opportunities, not just leads, but all sorts of other things. When you're putting yourself out there, people start finding you. And so that was what led me to get past all of that internal reasoning for why I shouldn't do this and to finally just say, okay, enough is enough. I've said 2 or 3 times already that I'm just going to do this already, but now I'm actually going to do it.
That is so fabulous. Thank you, Emma, for detailing all of that for us because I think that the journey of that is what so many of us go through when we want to do something, but we're afraid, right? And it boils down to, are we going to just try? Are we going to just put it out there anyway and see what happens? And there's some bravery, there's a little bit of courage you have to do that. And I love that you went ahead and did it anyway. And the story about that specific video that is a little bit of a different twist than you normally were publishing. And it kind of hit better, it sounds like, than maybe a typical one that you would do. And so I think that's an interesting concept and looking at why did that particular one have a little bit more of a spike in viewership versus others. And makes me wonder, is it that personal kind of heartfelt, a little bit more like real in-depth, like me kind of a video that you shared versus a tactical, maybe actionable video, although super helpful and beneficial for viewers, may not be quite as personable.
I think that there's probably a lot to what you just said. And I think it's interesting because we are in such a dynamic time right now with the way that AI is coming into the mix in our world. And it's between AI and TikTok and just all of these tools that are flooding us with content all the time, more than what any of us can bear. Yet it seems like we're constantly consuming it anyway. So, one of the things that I think that does is it actually makes us hungrier for authenticity and opportunities to feel like we're connecting with other humans. And I think that actually also influences how we market our businesses and what people are looking for with brands as well. They're looking for, because there are so many choices now, brands that are figuring out how to really connect with people around a set of values or interests are able to be more profitable, are able to build really loyal customer bases, and are just better positioned to be able to manage a lot of the change that we are seeing and that we are going to continue seeing. And an interesting detail that emphasizes that point is I wish I remembered where I read this, but I read this recently and I've seen similar things in other places as well, where more and more companies aren't really performing nearly as well as social media pages of the founders or of other people that are working in the business. And that those are actually the places that are driving a lot more traffic and a lot more interest and a lot more connection with potential customers, because it is an opportunity to connect on that human level in a way that isn't overly curated, in a way that is not so also sales focused, that really is more about relationship building. And ultimately, we are all going to be more likely and more comfortable buying from somebody who we trust, who we feel like we relate to. And I anticipate seeing even more of that as AI continues to take over and as we only become even more bombarded with all the content everywhere left and right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Good points in there for sure. It's that human connection has always been what we've needed and wanted. And really, I think that makes a huge difference in your business's performance when you are looking at who your customer is and trying to connect with them on a level that they're at. I think you're absolutely going to have better performance, right? Because it's more of a real connection. You've really got that going together versus just throwing, like you said, it's not salesy. You're not just throwing a sales pitch in someone's face. We're connected on a human level. I absolutely agree with that. And the point about the AI writing and images and all of that really is becoming the topic of the day because it's going to be such a huge thing in the future that for, copywriters or artists or whatever, because really it can be used kind of across the board. We've got to have a bit of a pivot and figure out how we can harness AI to our benefit to make sure that we're not lost in that shuffle. But not to get too far off topic, because we absolutely could have a whole conversation about that. But I want to talk then about some of the maybe techniques that you're using with your YouTube channel. And you shared about some of the content that you like to share for your customers, your clients, or just people who find you. But what are maybe some things that you think are effective in building the channel so that it is found by viewers?
I'm still very much learning that, but one thing that I try to really keep in my mind, because I've had numerous people who have been successful on YouTube, which is it is a long game. You hear about, for example, people on TikTok who blow up overnight from their first video. Most of the time, YouTube is a longer game. It's something that you really have to be consistently committed to for an extended period of time before it really starts to take off. And so I'm really trying to keep that always in the back of my mind. And so I'm not too caught up in the performance of any single video or in feeling frustrated that I'm not making faster progress than I would want to, because I am someone that I wouldn't say that anybody who knows me would call me patient. I am not patient at all. And I'm like used to being able to figure out, okay, I can do this and I can get this result. And YouTube is not quite as responsive in that way. And so there are a few things that I'm keeping in mind. One is YouTube is a search engine, just like Google or a lot of other platforms. SEO can be a great tool for being able to connect with different audiences. And so I don't allow SEO to necessarily dictate the types of topics that I'm going to be doing, but I do want to make sure that there is the SEO justification for a video before I go ahead and film it. So there are a variety of different tools that you can use to do that. But I do think that's a really essential piece of things. I really experiment with topics. So I think that especially when you're just starting off, you don't necessarily know what people are going to resonate with. And so this how to network as an introvert video is a great example of a video that if I had my guess, I would have thought that it would have been my lowest performing video. And so what that signals to me is maybe I should experiment with some other kinds of videos like that and see, was that a fluke or was that actually sending me down a little bit of a different direction than I had originally anticipated? So I think that's being open to what is actually hitting, but also recognizing that there are so many variables at play that if you're trying to over optimize every single thing, you may be getting too caught up in the smaller details rather than looking at everything as a whole. Something else that I did that very early on, also at the encouragement of a friend who has just created a lot of content in his life. And he said, Emma, you have to find somebody to edit your videos because if you don't, that is going to be the thing that makes you give up. And I'm really glad that he was kind of pushing it. I was like, no, how will anybody know what my vision is? And I was very, resistant to the suggestion when we were talking, and then when I got home and I had time to process it, I decided, "You know what? Let me just go on Upwork and let me post a job description." I don't even know how to hire a video editor because I've never done this before. I don't know how to tell them what I want. I don't know any of the lingo, but I interviewed a few different people and I did trials with a few different people, and I ended up hiring an editor, and I can tell you that my friend was so right because if I would need to be spending hours every week on editing, which is not my skill set, where I was constantly getting frustrated because I knew something that I wanted to do and I didn't know how to do it. But also, so many times my editor sends something back to me and I'm like, I wouldn't have thought to include that clip there, but I love that you did that. And so it's taken away one of the biggest resistance points that I would have had. For other people, it might not be editing. And this also doesn't have to apply to just YouTube. This is in general a business lesson that I've learned is figure out where those resistance points are that are also going to become very convenient excuses for why you can't or shouldn't do the thing, and then minimize those resistance points so that you kind of take away those excuses, but also give yourself more time and energy to be able to focus on the things that you're really good and that you enjoy doing. And so that it becomes something more pleasurable and that you want to be working on and committed to because it is a very big commitment of time that you're making.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. And the points that you made in there were excellent. This idea of having someone else edit your videos for you. First of all, if you're running your own business, unless it's video editing, you're probably not going to have the skill set required to edit videos. And while you can do it, it's going to be incredibly time consuming. And where does your focus need to be? It's probably not on editing a video, it's running your business. And so I think that's a fabulous point that you made there. And while it could also be an opportunity to learn a new skill set, if you have the time for it and expand your knowledge, great if you can. But I love that it is an opportunity for somebody else to share their take on what it is that you've created and maybe highlight it in a way that you never thought possible.
Yes. Yeah, and it makes it feel like it's a little bit less of a solitary thing as well, because now I have somebody else that I'm able to interact with, and I can ask him a question like, "Oh, do you think that point was articulated well?" And then makes suggestions to me for things that, would be good to add or include or consider for future videos. And so I think that he's also helping me do a better job at what I'm focusing my time on because I have not just the feedback of the end result, but the feedback of somebody who is an expert at editing YouTube videos who is giving me suggestions of things to be working on. And um, it's really important to obviously not get so caught up in always wanting to improve every single thing because you can get really stuck in that, but small helpful pieces of advice as you're going along can be really great ways of being able to level up without getting totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's really taking somebody else's knowledge, experience, and time they've spent learning something and just absorbing that advice and how much that can launch you forward because now you don't have to go through that trial and error period because they've already done all that. And if you're willing to take that advice and run with it, where's it going to take you?
Yeah.
Because now you've just cut out all that time of having to learn the processes and whatever instead of just focus on where it needs to be going. So, X
Exactly.
point. Yeah. So, you also touched on SEO and you made a point in there about how YouTube is also like a search engine. And so, maybe share a little bit about your thoughts on that, why you feel like it's considered a search engine.
People use YouTube for a variety of things. It's owned by Google, so anything on YouTube is also searchable via Google. So if you notice a lot of times when you search things on Google, you may even get some video recommendations that pop up there. It's not even just on YouTube, but let's focus on YouTube just for the sake of simplicity. Of course, there are people that are just there purely for entertainment, but people also utilize YouTube as a place to learn how to do anything under the sun, from home improvement to to use certain functions on their iPhone to different business principles. And so you can utilize how that functions as a way to be able to position your content to get in front of people that would be not only interested in a specific video that you're filming, but ideally all of your other videos and as a way for them to be able to discover you, discover your channel, and want to continue tuning into your content. And so thinking about it's not just do you have the keywords? You also have to make sure that your content is relevant to the keywords that you are wanting to use. But then you also need to optimize for, let's say that you have the keywords and all of that is correct, but you don't have a great thumbnail or you don't have a persuasive title. And then people aren't going to be clicking into your video. You're going to have a low click through rate, and then you're not going to be performing as well as you could. And that's actually one of the areas that I feel like I'm weakest at that I'm currently trying to figure out. So I hired someone to help me with my thumbnails, and I'm not thrilled with the thumbnails that they've been creating. So I just think that it's perhaps time for me to find someone new because I have a vision for what I want, but similar to the editing, I'm not a designer. And so even with Canva, which makes things much easier, I feel like I have the image in my mind of what I want, and then I look at the final product of what I've created, and there is a very wide gap. So
Oh
that
my
is just
gosh.
as important. Your video can be great, but if nobody's clicking into it, then nobody's gonna see it.
Yeah. And I love that you shared about how the keywords that you're using absolutely have to be relevant to the video so that it makes sense for when somebody begins to watch it, that there's that connection there. And the idea that brands can really use this as an opportunity to get their product, their information, their service, whatever it might be in front of people who need it because you can search there.
Yeah,
And so, yes, I love that. What a great way to have another opportunity to be marketing your business in a way that's seen as helpful because
yes.
YouTube is often seen as a learning opportunity or a place of learning.
Exactly. So let's say I have my microphone sitting right here. So this I feel like always ends up being an example that I use. But let's say that you have a microphone company and you want to create a YouTube channel. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be about microphones. It could be about starting your own podcast. And obviously, a microphone is a critical piece of that. And so you can use it to talk about how important a good microphone is and at times pitch your microphone in a more subtle way. But if you become a resource for people that are looking to start their own podcast, you're gaining so much authority and credibility. It also gives opportunities for partnering. Maybe you don't manufacture cameras, and so you partner with a camera company. So there's all sorts of other types of business opportunities that you can generate by doing something like that, in a way that if you were only selling your microphone on your own website and on other marketplaces, it's more on the transactional stage. So it's more about, oh, you're looking for a microphone. Here's the microphone for you, which, let's not undervalue that. That's very important. And also, when you have this content marketing piece of, for example, if you were going to have a YouTube channel about how to start a podcast, you also need a really strong sales page when people get to that side of things. But those two combined, then you're really owning the full funnel of the customer journey. And you're also less beholden to having to spend as much money on expensive ads and influencer partnerships and all of those things, because you are creating a constant flow of new leads and opportunities that are finding you because of the work that you've done.
Yeah, excellent point in there for sure. The point that I wanted to talk about right now is how you're saying that, yes, the detail page of like an Amazon listing or your website is going to tell them this is XYZ about the product. But when you're seeing it maybe used in a live event or on YouTube, a recording for whatever it is, then you can see it in action. And it's a little bit different of a way for the viewer to absorb the information, I think. So I think it's cool. I love the idea of knowledge about something shared in a way that people are truly learning also.
Yes. Yeah. There's an interesting book underneath here. It's called They Ask, You Answer. And it essentially, the whole concept is by creating a constant flow of inbound leads through looking at the questions that your customers would have. And so I think one of the examples in the book was talking about, it was some sort of pool service. And so going through all of the different questions that customers might have about pools, even if it didn't necessarily relate to maybe they were building pools, but this was meant more about servicing and maintaining and caring for pools. And so they just started creating content about all things pool related. And then it became, when people are searching for anything pool related, they're performing high in all of the search results because they're creating valuable content. And so then, by way of that, not only are people clicking into your site, but then you're establishing yourself as an authority. If you're the place that somebody is going to learn about a particular thing, and then eventually they want to buy that particular thing, you have established yourself with a lot more credibility, and you have a leg up that other companies don't. And that doesn't even add in the piece about more personal relationship and authenticity and some of these other things. So when you add that to where it's not just that they see you as an authority, but they like you, they understand who you are, what you stand for, what your company's values are, then that's even more powerful as a tool. And what's also great is it's not short lived. It's not something that is going to fade away and be unsearchable. Something that you create for YouTube or for your blog or things like on those types of platforms, they really can be evergreen content that can be found for years and years and can really have like a very long trajectory of being able to serve your business and your goals by investing the time into creating a really solid piece of content.
Yeah. You know what? It just made me think of, it's like a long shelf life. So it's evergreen. It's there. When they say stuff that's on the internet lasts forever, they're kind of not kidding. And so YouTube videos, they are out there, and it may not be, it's hit a million views in 24 hours or something, but it's still out there and it's still going to be searchable. Like you said, Google owns YouTube, and they are going to, of course, be promoting each other and content in both places because it's really one. And so you're going to find it. And I love the point that you made about your establishing kind of your authority on a subject when you're talking about these videos that you're creating. You're sharing information about a product or a service or whatever, but you're kind of saying, hey, I know this. I want to share it with you so you know it. And then people are going to follow that person now or that company or brand or whatever because they are teaching me something that I have learned and now I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very different anybody can make you feel excited about a product. A good salesperson, they don't necessarily have to know anything about what it is that they're selling, but in the moment, they can get you excited and emotional and buying something that you may or may not want. And I'm not suggesting that sales is gross or bad. I think sales is very important. And I think skillful salespeople and good salespeople actually help match people to something that's going to be in the customer's best interest and really help them solve a problem that they need to solve. But the thing is that there are lots of people that are really good salespeople that don't actually have the credentials or background or knowledge. And so you can also see the difference. You can see this is a way, if you really have invested the time and the energy and the effort into learning something, and this is a way that you can utilize that effort that you've made to be able to separate yourself and differentiate yourself and show, I'm not just selling you this because I saw that a lot of other people are selling this and I think I can make money, but I have expertise in this and I want to show you that expertise and I want to help you understand this. And then, hey, if you don't wanna do this yourself, or if you're looking for a product that can solve that problem, I have this that can help you. And so it's also a great way for people like me who don't feel as comfortable in sales conversations to be able to still get closer to that, but from a way that feels more comfortable to me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's 100% valid. I think it's not in everybody's nature to be salesy per se. But again, to go back to sales is vitally important. Nothing happens until something is sold. And I heard that ages ago. Really, if you think about it, until somebody needs to buy a pencil, there's nothing that's going to happen prior to that needing a pencil. You know what I mean? And so that's where nothing happens unless something is sold. So, besides that, I just want to share again about how important it is, like you're saying, if you've got knowledge and expertise in an area, you can use YouTube as a way to share that information with others so that it benefits them. And ultimately, what you're doing is in a giving way, helping them solve a problem or find a solution to whatever it is that they may be needing. And so, what a great way for brands to expand the opportunity for themselves.
Absolutely. Yep. And if YouTube isn't your thing, pick your platform that feels comfortable to you. So if you're more drawn to TikTok or LinkedIn or Instagram, or if you're like me and you're just doing all of them, which I wouldn't necessarily advise because it's a lot of energy, but you can find the thing that feels most organic to you. And then you can always add on as you go, as you gain more confidence, as you feel more comfortable, as you start to connect in with what are people interested in. I just recently started experimenting with short form videos on TikTok, Instagram, and then YouTube and LinkedIn. I'm posting it all the different places and I'm doing that for a few reasons. One is I have different audiences in all of those places. And two, the platforms all perform in different ways. And so I'm able to get really interesting feedback just in seeing what gets the most views, what gets the most engagement on the different platforms. So I'm both learning about the different platforms, but I'm also learning about the kinds of content that people are interacting with the most, and then I can use that to inform how can I actually make better YouTube videos. It's a way of really being able to test ideas and concepts and get more comfortable on camera and all of those things, in a way that you get instant feedback that you don't get as quickly and readily with YouTube as you do with these other platforms. I think using them in tandem can actually be really helpful and maybe even expedite some of the figuring out learning curve of things.
Thank you for sharing that with us because the short form video on YouTube, that's something that I have not even begun to dig into, but I know that it's become a huge thing and it's really popular. TikTok, again, just barely putting a toe in there because, like you said, all of these different platforms have kind of different formatting and different requirements, and you've got different followers there, and they're looking for different types of information. And so it's can be very time consuming. And so you kind of do have to pick and choose what makes the most sense initially until you get established, right? And you're seeing feedback and you're seeing it quicker so that then you can begin to make adjustments. And so that's always a good thing, a good tool, right? To have that opportunity to learn and grow and change so that you're really putting out there what people want to see. So I think that's excellent. Well, Emma, I've enjoyed our conversation so much. I knew I would, and this has just been delightful. You shared a book with us just a little bit ago, and I'd love for you to share again that book. And then also, if there's any others that you think are beneficial or have been helpful for you that you'd like to share with the listeners.
So this book that I just mentioned is They Ask, You Answer. It's by Marcus Sheridan. Here's the cover again. Some other books that I would recommend. I'm a big studier of human psychology. I think it's so helpful in understanding the root influences that not only we can utilize as tools to be more influential in what we're doing, but also in understanding how our own minds work and how maybe companies are utilizing that to influence us. So what even if you're not selling anything, it can be worthwhile to do some learning about that. So a great book is Influence by I believe Robert Cialdini. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his last name. I also love Thinking Fast and Slow, which that's Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, I believe. Both of those really get into how our brains have a lot of shortcuts that they follow to be able to quickly make decisions and to manage the massive amounts of information that we're constantly being bombarded with, and how those are not always what we would expect them to be, that we are anything but rational when we start to dig into the ways our minds work. And it's really fascinating, if nothing else. So I would recommend both of those books. Absolutely.
Great recommendations for sure. Thank you, Emma, for sharing those with us. I'll include those in the show notes for the listeners to easily find. And yes, I absolutely love reading books and studying information on the brain because it truly fascinates me as well. And you're absolutely right. We are so far from rational, and the decisions that we make are made sometimes instantaneously, and we don't even know why. I love those recommendations for sure. Do you like to listen to other podcasts? And if you'd like to share those with us now, that'd be great.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think I listen to podcasts a lot as a way of being able to decompress. So I do have some ones that I learn from Hidden Brain along the lines of learning about our own inner workings. I do love, and that's a fantastic one. Andrew Huberman's podcast is all about health and optimizing our bodies and minds, and that is a great one as well. And then I'm always either listening to some sort of true crime or some such kind of candy podcast. It's just interesting.
And for sure, we've got to have that sometimes too, right? It doesn't always have to be about learning, although that's great. Sometimes it is fun to listen to other things that just kind of pique our curiosity in a different way. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's why I always ask my guests to share whatever book or podcast they want, because it's an opportunity for the listeners to try something new.
Yes.
And they may find something that they never thought they would enjoy.
Oh, yeah. I'm almost always listening to a podcast. I walk 5 miles a day, so I listen to a lot. Most of them are pretty forgettable and nothing that I would necessarily recommend. Catches my interest for a moment, but then I couldn't even tell you what it was called later.
And that's okay. Well, Emma, again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this knowledge and information with us. Lastly, before we close out, I always love for my guests to share how the listeners can find them if they have questions, they want to follow along your journey and see what you're working on. How would they be able to do that?
Absolutely. So we've been talking a lot about YouTube. My YouTube channel is Marketing by Emma. And then that's also my website, marketingbyemma.com. On my website, you'll be able to find all the other platforms, whether you prefer LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, all the things are there. We also have contact form and email and phone number. So if you'd like to reach out and if there's anything that we can help with, whether you'd like to ask some questions or get help with some of your copywriting or branding needs, we would absolutely be happy to help in any way that we can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And I'll be sure to include all the details of that in the show notes for the listeners to find. And Emma, thank you again for coming on and sharing this with us. I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for hosting me. And I don't know if you heard, but that was my dog standing outside the door reminding me that it is 5 minutes until his dinner time.
Well, then we'll talk more soon.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.